Good day again. In the previous video, I've shown you how to connect and set up Laravel and Angular. Now in this video, I'll show you the basic CRUD operation of the to-do list that we did. By the way, the previous video that I was talking about, I'll put the link in the description below. Okay, so this is now assuming that you already have set up the Laravel project for the API and then the Angular project for the client. So the first thing that we have to do is set up the database. Now in Laravel, there's a built-in function that you can use for creating database tables. It's called migrations, database migrations. So for us to create our database tables, we're going to have to create migrations. So we could either create a file that looks like this, or just use the Laravel's artisan migration command to create it. For example, PHP artisan make migration, create to-dos table. Okay, so after that command, you'll see a file created inside the migrations folder. And then if you open it up, then you'll see that there's a code where you can add your fields. So in this one, we're calling the schema create function, and we're passing in the name of the table. So this one, you can change this to whatever table that you're creating, and then just add the fields here at the bottom. So you will just say title. Then just to make it more interesting, let's add a description on our to-do. Okay. So right now, this is just a migration. There's no actual table yet. What we need to do is we need to migrate these migrations. But before that, make sure that you already have the database created. So I'm going to create a database called to-dos. Then before migrating, what we need is we need to configure Laravel to point to that database. So there's two ways to do that. First, you can either use the config for the database here. So since we're using MySQL, we can configure MySQL here, like this one. Or you can just use the environment variables here. So to do that, we need to edit the .env file. Okay, so the database connection is MySQL. Then the host, localhost, port, the database, to-dos. Then the username for me is root, and there's no password on my local MySQL, so it's going to be blank. Now just put whatever values you have set up here in your own local machine, and you should be good to go. Okay, so for now, we're going to use the env. You can also use direct string literal here, like for example, if you don't like using the env file, you can directly put 1 to 7 here, localhost. But during production, env is useful so that you don't have to keep on changing it, or if you change your local configuration, the server won't be affected. So now, after setting it up, we have already our migration. Then now we can migrate using the PHP artisan command. Okay. So as you can see, there were default migrations created by Laravel. So out of the box, it has the users table, password reset, the failed jobs table, personal access token. Then we have our own here, the to-dos table. So we just included it in the migration, but we won't be touching this other tables. We're just gonna do we're just gonna use the to-dos table. So after that, there should already be the tables inside your database. Then we can start modifying the API. So to modify the API, let's see. We go to the controller that we've created earlier. Instead of using this literal array, we're going to use the model. So for the model, we can either create a new file here, or we can use another command, another artisan command. Okay. Okay. So it creates a class that extends the Eloquent model. So in Laravel, it actually predicts the table name depending on the class name of your model. So in this case, Laravel will assume that you're using the to-dos table, but lowercase uh, letters. But nevertheless, you can also override it if you have a custom table name that doesn't match Laravel's pattern. So for example, you can override the table property. Maybe your name is my to-dos example. But in our case, we don't have to override it because we're using the convention. Now, after creating the model, we could just directly uh, say here to do all. So this is going to fetch all of the to do in our list, in our table rather, and still going to return the to dos. So if we try to run this and see the output, there should be no output here since we have no to do yet on our database. So one thing that we can do is we can uh, add a display when there are no to do on the list. So we can say if um, there's no to-dos, then okay, you can modify your own message. But basically, we're just to tell the user that there's no record found, or we can say no records found. Okay. Otherwise, we should display the to-dos. Now let's leave that for now, and let's go to adding the to-do first, so that we'll have something to display. Okay. What we can do is we can add a button here, or maybe a link like that. Okay, then let's create a form that will display, that will contain the form. I usually name it this way. Okay, let's define the component. Okay, then let's add these to our module. Right. Now what we want is we want to add it to the routes so that we can navigate to it. In this case, we have to add a routing module for to-dos. It's going to be an ng module. Then we're going to define our routes. Actually, in this case, we may want to define another page for the list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another directory for the pages. It's going to contain the index component, actually the index page for the to-do. and the template. Okay. Now here in our to this page, we just have to set the router outlet so that pages will be rendered inside there. Then we're gonna move the displaying here to our index page. Okay. Let's see. Right. Just add the index to the component, to the module rather. Okay. Now this should be routed to the index component. Then new. Right. Okay. So for the routing module, we're gonna export the router module, import router module that for child. Since this is a child module, and add the routes. Right. Sorry. Then we should import to the routing module to the to do module itself. Okay. Then we have to modify the main routing module. Instead of just setting the component, we're going to use a different way of loading it because we need to load all the routes for to-dos. So we're going to say load children. It accepts callback. And we're going to import the module for to-do. Then returns a promise to the module. Okay. Now let's check if it's working. Index page. Okay. We weren't able to import the template. Right. Okay. So it works. Now this is now loading the index page. So we have to rename this. So it's not a page anymore. It's just the main component where the page is being displayed. So I'm going to rename it. Okay. Right. So we have now our to-do index page here. Now we have to navigate to the form for creating new to-do. So let's add here. Just to test that it's working. Okay, so there it is, to-do form. Now, What we want is you want to add the form. So change this to new to do and add the form. Now for this example, I'm going to use Angular's reactive forms. So let's import the needed modules. We need the module, then the reactive forms module. So it depends on your coding style, but for me, I usually, when it's getting longer, I usually do it this way, so it's readable. That okay. See a title, text, then we need to add for description. Let's use the text area here. Add a placeholder. Okay, let's look at this. Right. Then let's add a submit button. Or otherwise we can just go back to the list. Okay, so right, navigation's working. Okay, to implement the reactive forms, we have to create a form group here. So I'm going to say to do form equals to new form group. Then we have to add the controls. We have the title, just a new form control. And we have the description. Okay. Then the to do form has to go to the form group. Yes. So it will be so it can be detected by the form. And we can now say form control name, title, and here the description. Okay. Then we need to add the submit function. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to print in the console the value of the form just to check that it's working. So let's add it to the form and just submit, save to do. Okay. So let's look at this one. Let's inspect console. By the way, the console is a very helpful tool rather the developer tools, the whole developer tools of the browser is very helpful in developing client applications. So to do one, then add sample description, then we click save. You'll see the content of the form has been printed in the console. So now we're ready for going to the database and saving it. Okay, so now what we want to do is, since we already have a service here on our previous video, now what I'll do is I'll create another function called uh, add. Also for passing the data, I usually create a model class corresponding the data that's going to be saved. So let's say to do support class to do, which has the properties of title and description strings. Okay, so that's just because of the ID, you can ignore that one. So we'll say here to do then create the request to the server, post request, then we add the body, which is to do. Right. So we then use this add function for saving our form. So we say we have to add a constructor here. So we'll inject the service. So instead of printing this to the console, we add this to we save it in a variable. So we'll call the service add, subscribe to it, response. Okay. We can type in this, like that. So we should probably just add an undefined here. See. Okay. So it's either null too. Right? So just to match the whatever's being returned here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the result. on the console, but also uh, after adding the to-do, we want to redirect to the list of to-dos. So we need to use the route to redirect. Okay, and to do that, we're going to navigate. We're going to use the router class. That. Okay, so this is what we have now. We have the form. We save the to do. We call the add method in the service. Subscribe to it, and then navigate to the list afterwards. Let's try this one. So do one, test description, save. Okay. Oh, I see what happened. So we already set up the client, but I forgot to set up the back end. So for saving a to do, we're gonna use the store function of a controller. Now to do that, we're gonna create to do. So we'll use the model again, call the create function, then pass the request body, then return it, status code 201. So as you can see, we're calling the request and getting all the body on that request and passing it to the to-do class. But this might be a security risk in the future because someone can inject anything or additional fields. So what we can do is we can say we can override the fillable property of an eloquent model. So we're going to say title and description. That way, no matter how many fields the client pass, it's only going to utilize the title and description field. So let's try this again. How to do. All right, that's fine because we haven't modified our index. So it's displaying a to-do object. Now here we're going to say to do the title. Then below it, we're going to add the description on the list. Oh, oh, okay. We have to, right. Let's use div instead. Okay. So now we have the to do displayed. So let's try it again. Okay. So there's two of them now. Okay. So that's adding and displaying. Now for the purposes of editing and deleting, I'm going to convert the display, instead of using a list, we're going to use a table. Okay. We have the title and then description, and on the body, we add the loop on the TR inside the body. Then this, okay. So we have the title and description. Then we need to add another column for the action that we're going to add. So we'll start with edit. To edit, we're just gonna navigate it to the form again and then pass the ID. So it's gonna be like this. Actually, like this. To do ID plus edit, and then we need to add the routing um, like this. Edit, still on the form component. Okay. Now to get the pass param ID param on the URL, we need to use the activated route. Then implement init so that when the component is initialized, we're going to get or subscribe to the param. So just to test this one, test this one, we're going to print the params to the console. Try this. ID does not exist. The ID here, number, right? Forget to add the edit text. Okay, so these are the links for the edit. Now you'll see that it will go to the form and then print on the console the param that we passed, which is the ID. Now what will happen is the form component, just to make sure, we have to check if params has the ID. If it does, we get it. And we like this. Then we're gonna need another function on the back end. We're gonna need the show function, which will get a single to do based on the ID that was passed to it. To do find ID. Then we're gonna return it. That sorry. To do 200. Okay, then we have to add another function in our service. I'm just going to name it show with the ID as parameter. CP client get produce. Then the format will be to add the ID at the end. So you can actually check the format or the pattern for these URLs on the Laravel doc. So if we go to the Laravel doc, we're going to see the controllers and resource controllers. So we're using resource controller. This is the same as an API controller, just lesser functions. So you'll see the pattern for the index, create, store, show, update, and destroy functions. So these are the pattern for the URL. You can learn more about it here. Okay, so we've created a show for getting one to do. Now we're gonna use it here on the edit. So what will happen is if there's an ID parameter, then we're gonna get it from the database and try to display it here during edit. Now to display it, we're gonna put it inside the form. So we're just gonna say to do form that patch value response. Now you'll see that it will be in the form. So we're in this link right now, the edit page. So for the purposes of detecting if it's an edit, I usually also create another a to-do object within the class. Then when the to-do that's being edited is loaded, I just set it there for safekeeping because we're going to be editing the form. Then we need the ID later. Also, we're going to need it for the title here. For example, what I usually do is I create two titles like this. So if not to do that ID, if there's no ID yet, then it's a new to do. Otherwise, it means it's an edit. So if we do it like that, then it's going to say edit to do. Okay. So now we have the edit display for this one. Let's try the other one. So the to do to, we're going to edit it also. Okay, so you see that it works. Now what we want is when we click the save button again, we're going to save it or rather update it rather than adding a new record to the database. So first we have to set up the update function. Okay, so we have to find first the to do that we're going to edit. Then we're going to say date, then pass the body, and then return the response. Okay, let's see. We have again on the service. We have to add another function for update. So we say this put. So that's the verb for updating. You can see here on the documentation. So for updating, it's either put or a patch. I usually use put. to-dos. Then you have to add the ID also, then the body. Okay. Now on the form component, if we do a save, then we're gonna have to modify this. So we're gonna say if not. So now we're using the to-do object that we have earlier, where the original to-do was stored, where it contains the ID also. So we're gonna say not. If there's no ID, then that means we're adding it. Otherwise, we're going to be updating it. So the to-do object that we created from the form, we're going to have to pass the ID here, and then we're going to say to the service that update. Then we're going to subscribe to it. And then after that, we're just going to navigate to the list to see the updated values. So for example, this one, we're going to say to do to edited, click save. Okay, you'll see that it has been edited even after refreshing. Okay, let's try to edit the description for this one. Okay, right. So that's for the edit. Now for the delete, uh, we're gonna add another button on our list. Let's close the other tabs for now. So it's a button itself. Delete, and we're gonna add a function here for deleting. Then we're gonna pass the ID that needs to be deleted. Now, since we don't have a lot of UI here, we're gonna use JavaScript's confirmation, just for the sake of confirmation. So let's see. Firm, sure, delete to do. So I could probably use a better name, but for now, that's it. So let's see. Confirm, delete. Then let's create an API first for delete. Uh, so we're just gonna have to get the model first, and then we say delete. So this is a built-in function in Laravel to delete a model. You call the delete function of it. Then we're going to return a response. We don't have to return anything since it has been deleted. So null. And the status code for that is 204. Okay, so that's the delete. Then after that, put that on the service. Now delete is actually a keyword here. It will work if we do it like this, but I like using destroy instead, just so it won't confuse with the delete keyword here in JavaScript. Then we call the HTTP client delete. Those still pass the ID. Okay, this is now on our service. Then when the user confirms that he wants to delete the to-do, then we have to call the service and destroy the selected to-do, subscribe to it. There's actually no response, but what we're going to do is we're just going to refresh the list. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to recycle this code here. This is not a good design, but just for the sake of showing it immediately, so we're going to create another function called fetch to dos and put this here. We call it on init. Then after deleting it, we call it again. Again, this is not a good design because it's going to be calling every time to the server. I would suggest using state management, but it's not included in the scope of our topic today. So for now, we're going to use this one. Okay, so let's try that. Let's see. So let's click on the delete in the second to do. Okay, we didn't bind it to the button. Sorry. My bad. So on click to say delete to do, and then the ID. All right. Let's make TypeScript happy by adding that. Okay. Right. Okay. So it shows the confirmation. Are you sure you want to delete? Click OK. Sends a request to the server. Delete. And then to refresh the screen, we again send another request called get to fetch all the to-dos. So let's delete this other one. Okay. So no records found. Instead of adding the no records found here, we could actually create another tr on the body. Call span of 3 saying no records found. This is the if statement here. All right, so there's the table. No records found. Let's add a new one. Right. Yeah. So basically, that's it. Uh, there's no UI implementation though. These are just basic. This is just to show how you would create a CRUD operation on Angular and on Laravel. Thank you for watching, and if you have any question, you can leave it on the comments. I'm regularly checking it, and also don't forget to subscribe. Have a good day. Bye.